Now let's go behind the rock screen.
You're welcome to come on in. We'll bring out the moonshine and start telling lies and calling up the women. But no talk about racing. Come on.
Your 2025 Eldora Speedway Modified Champion, once again, from Wapakoneta, Ohio, Jerry Bowersock. Jerry, thanks for coming on.
Yep, thanks for having me, Josh.
So I wanted to start out, we've talked before, but let's talk about it again. When did you get started in racing?
First year actually raced in 1985. And then, I'd been going to the races since probably before I could even remember. My parents took me when I was a little kid. So, I'd always been around the races from, 5, 6 years old and just always went and watched. And then, I hung out with John Staples. He was a local racer. When I was in my teenage years, would go tag along with him, kind of help him a little bit. And then, I fortunate enough to have a pretty decent job right out of high school. And a friend of mine was kind of getting out of the stock car racing at the time, and he made me kind of a package deal on all his racing stuff. And so wham bam, I had me a car, trailer, motor that just needed reassembled, and we were ready to go racing. And we didn't get started right at the beginning of the year, but we might have missed the first 2 months of the season in '85, and then pretty much from then on, we've pretty much raced as much as possible since 1985.
Man, that's awesome. So you touched on something, and I hadn't thought about asking you about this, but I'm going to ask you about it because you mentioned it. So there has been talk in the recent past about trouble not only getting younger generations to come to the track as fans, but also finding that help that you need to work on the car. That's kind of sounds like, your parents and family and all that were involved and you were going to the races, but you really started getting involved in racing when you started helping on a car when you were young. So how do you feel, how do you view that as far as today with the younger generation trying to get them, and what kind of advice would you have to kids out there who might be interested but just haven't had the opportunity yet to help on a race car?
Yeah. One thing nowadays, I mean, racing is a lot of work right now. Like, there's just so much preparation, and it's very time consuming. And some young people have the drive to want to do that. And then other people, after they're around a little bit, I think they realize, whoa, this is like way more than what I anticipated. And, if you join a race team, even if you get paid, I mean, you're probably not getting paid near enough money for the amount of hours you're going to work. I mean, if you average the hours out over the weekend racing and working on the car, and then all week working on the car, you might have worked for a couple bucks an hour. It's just, it's a tough deal. And, there's a lot of stuff for people to get involved in nowadays. I mean, so, trying to, get the young kids involved sometimes hard, because there's so many other things they can go do and ain't near as much work as racing. And, so it's kind of a catch-22. I've been fortunate over the years to get some UNOH kids to come help me out. And then, I've always had, my loyal people that, are with me all the time. And this year, it was just me and a buddy of mine, Josh Pitts. It was just me and him probably 75% of the time with the late model. And then, when we were closer around the house, of course, we'd have more help. So,
Sure.
And then, just trying to find people during the week, even just small stuff like, you got to clean the trailer up, you got to wash the car. Those things, I guess, maybe aren't real attractive to kids like they want to get real hands on with the car possibly, but it's like, well, we got to do this stuff too. And this stuff kind of, sucks, so to speak, but it's got to get done,
Yeah.
so that you can get ready for the week. So, it's just, you try not to bore them with the cleaning details. You want to try to let them help on the car, but yeah, you got to get that stuff done too. So, it's hard to get them involved and keep them involved and, stuff like that. But, a lot of the younger kids, they're more into real high tech stuff now. Like, they're into using their phone or laptop, computer, what have you. And with the dirt racing, you use some of them tools, but I think a lot of the young kids have gravitated to drag racing and stuff because they can use a lot of them tools to tune the car, stuff like that, where we don't do that as much dirt racing. So yeah, it's just it's a tough deal to get people involved and make a commitment to spend so much time driving around, going to the races. And sometimes you'll get some young guys to come around, and then eventually they meet a girl, get a girlfriend, or get married, and then priorities change, and then they're off on to the next thing in their life, and that's fine. Everybody's got to go down the path they got to travel, and so it's always a revolving door of for like me, you might have somebody help you for a year or two, and then they're on down the road doing something else or whatnot. So it's kind of hard to keep a steady flow of help and stuff like that. And yeah.
So does your night at the track look like everybody's else, or is it different? Sometimes if I'm walking around the pits before a race, I'll see a good amount of teams that kind of unload, but they're ready to roll. But then you see some teams that they're tinkering because they've either, whatever the weather might be or where the track looks like, they might be tinkering. Then you got a few guys that roll it out, and I'm not sure they touched it in a while, and they're hammering away trying to get things rolled. So do you kind of work throughout the week so when you get there, you're ready to roll?
Yeah, usually I want to be ready when I get there. Now, that being said, you're not always ready. I mean, you might have raced Friday night and you're really hustling trying to get to the track on Saturday. And I like to go ahead and allow myself a little extra time, if possible, to get to the track, in case you say you got a flat tire or whatever, and, get there. And once you get there and get the car out, you can always kind of finish up some last minute things, at the track once you're there and you've got your pill drawed or whatever, and you're signed in and got that stuff all kind of out of the way. Then you can go back and piddle around with the car. But, like usually heading into Friday, if we're going on Friday, we've been working on the car during the week, and barring some last minute deal where you're putting an engine in or you've been waiting on a part to come in or something, we typically, I like to be ready. And when I get there, just kind of maybe you can just chill out for a little bit and bullshit with some of your buddies at the track, and kind of wait for hot laps to get going. But, like I said, it's not always the case, but that's what I like to try to do anyhow before I get there.
Sure. What different divisions have you raced in?
Started stock car, and then we started going over to Montpelier, Indiana, and they kind of they called it limited late models, like it wasn't full blown late models, but it wasn't stock cars. So we'd kind of went over there, and in 1988, I won the limited late model track championship over there, and then in '89 I actually went full-blown late model racing. And then, the modifieds really didn't come into the area till, I want to say 91. I think right in that time frame is when modifieds kind of took hold in this area. They were more in the Iowa area out west, and then they kind of gravitated this way. And Charlie Dunbar, the guy that I drove his modified in the early goings there, and he owned a limited late model that I drove, and he had kind of approached me, what do you think about this modified stuff? And we went to Eldora and watched the very first race they had, and it's like, yeah, this looks, like something that's pretty cool. Cars were, they were a lot fancier, say, than your stock car, but they weren't as crazy expensive as the late model. And so we kind of made a relationship with Don Adams at Lightning Chassis, and we were kind of, so to speak, a dealer for this area. And the first year, like at Lima, Findlay, Eldora, it was a new class. So we was trying to get the class going, So we built a brand new car, brought it home, started calling anybody and everybody in the Lima area that was possibly thinking about going modified racing, got them to come down, check the car out. And I'd say probably in a 2-year period, we probably sold a good 15, maybe 20 modifieds to drivers. I think the first modified race we ran, there might have been maybe 10 cars if we were lucky. And then by the end of the year, we were probably a full feature. And then by the second year, we were probably possibly pushing the limits of having to run a B main and eliminate a few cars, whatnot. But it was kind of cool to be involved in that, getting that class up and going. We were a dealer for a chassis, Ken Langhall's over in Delphus, who eventually bought Lima Land. He was a dealer for the Harris chassis. And so we had a couple people right in the area that were offering cars to people, and kind of got the class up and going and got it on, really solid footing in this area. And then it just exploded from there.
So,
but then I guess I forgot what we were talking about classes.
That's fine.
Anyhow, we went street stock racing, limited late model racing. Then we late models. Then we did late model and modified. And then in, I want to say 99, I was driving Andy James's modified. He was heavily involved in my late model program, owned some engines, whatnot. One night he calls me up and says, "What do you think about going sprint car racing?" And I'm like, yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, that's all I ever wanted to do is drive a sprint car. But of course I already traveled down a different path. So yeah, I was pretty jacked up about the whole sprint car thing. So I'm like, yeah, let's get one. So we went and looked at a used one. And when we left, I'm like, boy, I don't know. I said, I don't know nothing about this sprint car racing. He didn't. I said, I just don't know that getting a used car is the right thing. So we ended up stopping off at Marshall Campbell's shop. And next thing I know, we were getting a new car, and we bought a used motor from Kyle Sauter, and we went and did some sprint car racing. So didn't do a lot of it. Boy, I was in a funny time in my racing career, I guess. The late model stuff was going really, really good. We were winning the American Late Model Series championship that year. And I was to the point where I had some teams that were World of Outlaw late model teams, had interest in me driving. And the sprint car deal happened around the same exact time. And it was like, if I was going to be really good at sprint car racing, then that's what I needed to go do. Like, I needed to stop racing the modified, the late model, concentrate on the sprint car really hard for, a year or two, say. And then if you wanted to go back and dabble with the other stuff, fine. But we were doing 360 stuff. And I remember the first night well, it might have been the second night I raced it at Findlay. I think we ran third. Really happy. Got third, Finished behind, I think, Paul Weaver, Tim Allison, top-notch guys.
Yep.
So I go up and get paid, and I remember not getting a whole lot of money. It was like, I want to say it was $250, and it may have been a little more, but it wasn't much. And I told the lady, I said, I got third. And she said, yeah, I know. She said, that's what third pays. And I thought to myself, are you kidding me? These late model races at that time paid that for last, and I'm like, boy, I'm taking a chance on getting my ass busted in this sprint car.
Yeah.
And I can go race this late model for way more money, and not take the chance. Late models really didn't flip over at all back then.
Right.
You see it more common today, but so then I'm like, boy, I don't know, maybe this late model gigs, I need to concentrate on that. So I just dabbled with the sprint car, ran decent with it. We actually finished top 15 in the Eldora points in 99, I think, and I only ran like half of the races. So if we could have ran the other half of the races, we actually would have had a shot at winning the points, because we was averaging like 6th, 7th place finishes that year, whatnot. And we'd won some heat races and a B main and some stuff like that, but nothing real crazy. But, it was fun. And I had one opportunity to go USAC sprint car racing for Joe Sealing. I actually worked for Joe for 13 years. And one day he's like, you want to go USAC sprint car racing? And it was the same thing. I looked at the payout on the USAC deal. Basically, from second on back, it was that same late model payout. Other than the winner's share was more. And I'm like, nah, I said, I'm just not interested. It's like, the non-wing cars will really get you in a bind if you get upside down, get hurt. And I just felt like the late model deal was the safer road to travel. And, if all that would have come about with the sprint car stuff, maybe 5 or 6 years sooner, I would probably be racing sprint cars, or I would have been done racing sprint cars and not be doing nothing at all.
Yeah.
It would have probably been a different path, probably if things would have just happened a little bit differently. But, you can't control timing and what goes on. And I just did what I thought was the right decision at the time to, what I thought was going to keep advancing me along at the time and stuff. So, yeah, I wish sometimes it would have turned out different with the sprint car deal, because I really liked them, and boy, they're much easier to work on than these damn modifieds and late models, let me tell you. There's times when I'm over here beating on these things, I think, boy, yeah, I should have stuck with that sprint car deal a long time ago. But yeah, that's water under the bridge now.
Yeah. It's I don't know. I always kind of laugh about it. It's hard to work on the car when you got that tarp cover in the back of it, but
yeah. I don't play too much with that stuff. Occasionally, I don't even know why they let people do that shit, to be honest with you. I don't know how many times I watch somebody drive out onto the track and they still got that damn, cover on the back of their car. They forgot to take it off. I'm like, really, people, come on. I don't know. I don't understand that whole deal. And don't even get me started on them stick signal guys. I mean, that just drives me goddamn crazy.
Wait, we're on the same page, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Oh, a lot to unpack there. So I kind of want to back up a little bit, because you touched on modifieds kind of coming to the area in the early 90s. And it really, I mean, you obviously had a big hand in it, but from what I can recollect back then, it really took off pretty fast.
Yeah, it did. It didn't take long, like I said, I'm pretty sure the first night we ran modifieds at Lima Land, I would say if there was 10 cars, we were really lucky if there was 10 that night. And like I said, Dean Miracle was running the track up there at the time, and he had made a pretty big commitment, him and Earl both, at getting that modified class up and going. And So, there wasn't a lot of cars, right there at first, but like I said, by the end of the year, we were getting full features and we were putting on some damn good races. There was a lot of fast drivers in this area at the beginning. Kenny Langhals drove himself. He was really good. Shane O'Connor, me, Chick Hale, he dabbled around with the modifieds at the beginning, and Bob Fricky from Lima. There was just there were some really good drivers in our area, and then there was guys coming out of Kentucky and Indiana and stuff. When this modified deal got rolling, and it was pretty tough competition right off the rip.
Yeah. And you also, something else you also kind of mentioned, it's something that I actually wanted to ask you about ahead of time, but you touched on it, so we'll talk about it now. What kind of thought process do you have on selecting a chassis? You run a modified, you run a late model. I can remember when it used to be like the big talk was like the Longhorn and the Rocket with the late models, and it's starting to transfer over now. Like you start hearing quite a bit about sprint car chassis, but what's your thought process on how you select what kind of chassis you're going to run?
Yeah, with chassis, man, I think I've drove about everything that's been built. Like, really got to figure out what fits your style of driving. A lot of times, like we made a big commitment this past off season with our modified. When the season ended in 24, it's like, what do we got to do to get better? And we decided we needed a different chassis, and Nick Hoffman's Elite chassis was just, winning everything. And so it's like, well, I talked to Nick about getting a car, and it's like, you can't just get a car from him. He only builds X amount of them a year. And he said, the best thing you can do is try to find a used car. And so we searched around, and we finally found this car that we got down in Kentucky and brought it home. And it just turned out that the car happens to fit my driving style really well. And, we had great results. And, like in the late models, like I've had brand new cars that we've bought and couldn't, hit my ass with both hands with them. And then, I'd get some car that's wore out and older, and I'd run good. It's just, what you feel. And, a lot of it, people pick certain chassis with where you live at. Like the late model Longhorns in North Carolina, Rockets in West Virginia. So obviously Rockets way closer. So, and I've been with them since 2006. So, I've been a pretty loyal Rocket customer. And, not saying maybe a Longhorn wouldn't fit my driving style better, because some guys have told me it probably would, but, you can't just switch brands of cars easily either, because then every spare part you got laying around, you're going to have new spare parts. It's really expensive to go switching chassis brands around. So when you make a decision, it's expensive. You better hope you made the right decision, and that it pans out. I mean, we could have easily bought this Elite car, and I could have not liked it, and everything would have went, terrible, and we would have spent a bunch of money and, been sitting here scratching our heads saying, what the hell went wrong, But fortunately, that was a good decision on our part. And, I've got a gentleman that's approached me maybe about helping me out with my late model program this year. We're in talks with him that, possibly we might be able to get a new car or part of a new car or whatever. So, we'll probably stay Rocket chassis, and then, hopefully this car is older. I bought it used from Tyler Urban, And it's been pretty well served its purpose, and so we'd like to get a new car and hopefully have the same results as we did with this Elite. If we get a new late model, get the new .2 rocket, maybe we can. I'm not saying we're going out and winning races with the late model, but I'd like to get a little more competitive than we was this past season. Not that our season was terrible, but I'd like to get up to on that Ironman late model deal. I'd like to see more top 10 finishes than what we had this year. So we'll just keep trying to work at it and see what we can do.
Okay. Not too long before we set this up, I just happened to be watching some older clips. In April of 2014, you and Jeff Babcock racing for the lead at Eldora on the final lap. You swapped positions 5 different times. Do you remember that night? What can you tell me about that race?
Yeah, I can remember my crew chief yelling at me because I got beat. Yeah, I remember that really well. We were just, swapping every corner, and I thought when I passed him down the backstretch that last time that I was going to be okay, and I wasn't sure what Jeff, was going to do coming into that last corner, and I thought I had positioned myself pretty good on the track that he wouldn't get back by, but obviously he did, and right before that, I'd kind of hooked him with my front bumper on his back bumper, trying to cross him over, and we were too close, and I about wrecked both of us, about really screwed up. But yeah, me and Jeff, we've had some. That ain't the only time me and him have swapped the lead around racing late models and modifieds. Actually, we've had some damn good races over the year and had a lot of fun doing it.
Awesome. So let's kind of recap, if you will, your 2025 season. Kind of start at the beginning of the season for us. Maybe walk us through some of the races that kind of stick out to you. I know, if I'm right, you made it to the Prairie Dirt Classic, Fairbury.
Yeah.
So start at the beginning of 2025 and kind of give us a feel for how things went.
Yeah, so we got started at Eldora the first race, and boy, our season was like, we got the car ready. We didn't get the motor till very last minute, and we had an appointment scheduled at Willie's to have the motor tuned up on the chassis dyno. Eric was taking the car out there, my car owner, Eric Austin, and he was really close to being to Willie's. Well, truck broke down. So thank God Willie's had a truck. They came, get the car, get it to the shop, get it on the chassis dyno, get that squared away. Well, then Jared Clay, local racer there in Lima, Jared, thank God for him, he was willing to drop what he was doing and drive all the way out there and bring Eric and the race car back home because the truck was out of commission. And this is all happening like a day or two before we got to be at Eldora. I want to say it was the next day. I think they had an appointment on Friday, and we're racing on Saturday, and we still got some loose ends to finish up. And so, when we get to Eldora, we are pretty on edge a little bit. New car and everything, and then boom, we go right out and won our heat race and ran second in the feature to Jeff Cos. So the year got off to a really good start, and then we didn't get to race a whole lot there. We went to Mount Pillier second night. I think we run 5th, 6th at a big mod show. Pretty happy with that. We went to Lima. I want to say we run 4th, 5th there. Pretty solid outing again. We went back to, we actually had something wrong with the motor after the third race. So we took the engine out of the car, took it back to the shop. So then we didn't race for, I want to say, a good month. We didn't do nothing. Well, I had already turned in my entry form to go out to Fairbury for the Prairie Dirt Classic, and we had another motor, and I told Eric, I said, hey, get that motor down here, we're going to go race. And he was kind of skeptical. That motor was smaller, and he was like, "Oh, you sure you want to do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I said, we ran second at Eldora that first night. I said, we're going to finish the year out. So we put the motor in the car. We went to Fairbury. It was running really good in our qualifier race. We was running fourth, and I don't know, with a handful of laps, me and Trent Young got together going down the backstretch and tore the right front suspension off. And so we tried battling our way out of the B main and just about made it into a transfer spot. And I hit a tire in the infield, knocked the whole nose off the car. So that whole weekend at Fairbury was kind of good and bad. We tore stuff up, but everybody knew we were there and we were fast. So,
yeah. And
then I want to say right after that, we go to Eldora for family fun night. We was fast qualifier. I think we ran third in our heat, and then we backed it up with a second place finish to Freddie Carpenter, and we was coming on really strong at the end. We had a good shot at winning that one, and then we went over to Montpelier, and I think we ran another race over there, ran maybe top 5. Then we go to Eldora for the Baldus Classic, winning that race. So we was really stoked about getting the win at the Baldus Classic, and then we went back over to Montpelier, ran the Terry Hall Memorial. Solid finish in that race. Came from the back up to, I want to say, 7th maybe. And then they had a regular program that night too. The Terry Hall race had been rained out, and so it's kind of like a double feature deal. And we came from like 17th to 2nd in the second one and almost won that one. And so then we didn't go race for a little bit because, we're sitting with the lead in the Eldora points, and we're like, boy, we don't want to do anything to jeopardize, the car possibly getting tore up. We only had the one motor. So we just kind of, took a few weeks off. I went late model racing. We just prepped to be ready to go to the Dirt Track World Championship and try to lock that championship down. And then, boy, that night, running away with the heat race and literally had the top radiator hose come off of the radiator and sprayed me down with water. Darn near crashed into the inside wall. Managed to keep going, and there was only one lap to go in the race. So I felt pretty confident that the motor could make it one lap around the track, being low on water. And so then we fixed all that stuff the next day to be ready for the feature, and was starting third. And I felt really good about our chances of winning that, and went into 1 and 2 on the start, and darn near spun out in front of the whole field. And trying to get going down the backstretch, somebody got into my right rear quarter, got me a little sideways. Somebody got into my left side, had me going back the other direction. I was going every which way but straight, and I'm thinking, holy cow, I'm about ready to piss this whole championship right out the window here. The Taylor, Jonathan Taylor, was leading the race at that time, and I had a 17-point lead at 1 point per car. I was somewhat safe, but here I am. I'm all the way back to like maybe 18th, and he's leading, so we're about even. So I had to really get moving, and I made it back up to 8th, and he had fell back to 6th. So he gained a couple points on me, but we was able to wrap the deal up, and it was a big relief. We battled some obstacles that weekend, and I really wasn't planning on happening, and
sure.
And so we kind of got that championship locked down, and so everything was good there, and we're just looking forward to starting to get things gathered up to get rebuilt and ready to go for next year.
Yeah, the Baltus Classic, 51 cars on hand, and there was a lot of good drivers.
Really good cars. Yeah.
You qualified 21st, and then you went from 8th to 2nd in the heat in that race. Obviously, you ended up winning the feature. So, is there ever, we talk about it, especially with sprint car racing, but is there ever a time where you try to set yourself up to qualify more towards the back? I don't think that's an approach that a lot of guys will
Nah.
take, but I think that is an approach that some guys will take. What happened that night with qualifying? Anything out of the ordinary?
Yeah, we had a petcock in the thermostat housing, and I don't know. Now we had run several races with that engine, but we had opened it up to bleed the air out of the system when we put the motor in, and I don't know whether it wasn't tight enough, whether the hood hit it, opened it up, but it sprayed me down with water qualifying, and I couldn't see, so I just I only had gotten one lap, and I was kind of, we were all on the track trying to qualify together, and I knew I had gotten one lap, and I didn't think it was that bad of a lap. I thought I'd be a little bit better. So I knew I had one lap in. I just pulled off because I thought I knocked the radiator out of it. But anyhow, we got in, realized what happened, kind of corrected that problem. So then when I seen the heat race lineup, I was like, holy cow, this heat race is loaded down with everybody that was really fast was in the same heat race. And I'm like, man, I got my work cut out for me now. It's like I've really dug myself a big, big hole. And shoot, they threw the green flag, and in 3/4 of a lap, we went from 8th to the lead of the heat race. So I was like, holy cow, just the middle of the track opened up, and I drove right through it. And I'm like, holy cow, I'm in the lead, and we ain't even made a lap. And so that all just worked out really good. The car was really good that night, and we just, we was lucky to overcome the problem that we had at the beginning of the night, and just, but yeah, I don't ever go to, especially Eldora. You're going so fast over there. I don't know how anybody could judge whether they're sandbagging or not over there. I just, because there's been times where I thought I was flat flying and I didn't qualify. We're the crap. And then there's other times where I thought, I didn't feel that good, and you'll be fast qualifier. So it's just too hard to, I don't know. People might say they're sandbagging, but it's pretty hard too. I mean, it's too easy to be the fastest car, or the 20th fastest car, I guess, if you get to clowning around too much, I guess I should say.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, I guess that comes to mind more so, depends on how the race is laid out, right? So, you've probably heard it, like the King's Royal is kind of synonymous with people saying, "Oh, that guy's he's not qualifying hard." And I think, to be fair, I think in the past that may have been, some of the guys may have been trying that. I don't think, especially here recently, I don't think, like you said, I don't think anybody's doing that. I think everybody's just you're running fast there and trying to run a quick lap. I don't think that's the case anymore. Anyways.
Yeah, there's sprint car people. They don't like that invert format like what we do with the late models at the big Eldora late model races. They kind of frown on it, but it makes it interesting.
I like it.
You can't sandbag really when they spin that wheel, and it's got a 0, 1, 2, 3, whatever's on there.
Yep.
You can't mess around qualifying. Back a long time ago, big late model races, it was always a 6. So if you could figure out, which it's about damn near impossible back in the day when there was a couple hundred cars, to position yourself 36 fastest. I don't know how you go about doing that, but I was fortunate enough a few times to end up being 32nd, 35th. I think I was 36 fastest one time, put myself on the pole of a heat race. But it's just tough. It's tough to do. I don't agree with all the different formats and how they come about lining people up, but everybody's got their own idea, and I mean, it pretty well going into the race what kind of format you're racing, so you just gotta deal with it and move on. I mean, a lot of the late model stuff I did this year is heads up, fast guy on the front row, and I mean, you qualify good, you're up front. You don't, you're in for a long night.
Yeah. No, it's fair, and I don't. We're talking about a couple different things here. The dirty air topic has come up a
Yep.
ton, especially with sprint cars, especially when you get on the big tracks,
Yep.
where it can get, I mean, it can freight train, you know, depending on how
Yep.
the track is set up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting, and I think they're still, you know, that's something they're still working on. They've been messing around with the wicker bills, and tires have
Mm-hmm.
been changing and all that, and I don't know if
Yeah.
they're ever going to solve that problem, but I certainly hope they do. Uh, the 2025 Eldora Track Champion in the Modifieds. This is your 5th Eldora Track Championship. You had 2
Mm-hmm.
second place finishes in 2025. You had a win in 2025 at Eldora, and then you had that 8th place finish to wrap up the championship. It cannot get old to win a championship at Eldora.
No. No. I told people they say, well, you got 6 championships now with the one late model. I'm like, yeah, but it took me 40 years to get 6. So I don't know if my average is real good, but I'm sure there's a lot of people there that would kill to have one. So
Right. Yeah.
I guess I shouldn't think like that because it's tough. I mean, I would put typically when we race modifieds at Eldora, most of the time the same 20 guys are there week in, week out, which they don't race all the time. We're 4 or 5 times a year, but those same 20 guys show up every time. And I want to say, really, out of all of them guys, they're all capable of winning a feature.
Mm-hmm.
It just depends on the break you get that night, your starting spot, whatnot. I mean, those Taylor boys from Pennsylvania, they're really good. Woodling, Drew Charleston. I mean, you can go on and on and on. Roman's in and out of there, and there's just a lot of tough modified drivers at Eldora, and starting spot, the breaks you get, how you qualified, determines a lot of how your night's going to play out down there.
Yeah. So you kind of touched on it. You're in the off season, obviously, and getting prepped for 2026. You've mentioned eventually, hopefully, one of these years getting to the Gateway Dirt Nationals. I know you're going to go race fan there, and also getting down to Florida sometime in February to run.
Yeah.
What does your off season look like?
We're in the process. The motors out of both cars are back being rebuilt, and going through transmissions and I shipped out the rack and pinion on the late model to be rebuilt today. Just, oil pumps out getting rebuilt, just getting your parts that need serviced out to where they got to go. And, we went down last weekend and picked up all the stuff we need to start rebodying the modified. And, you just start trying to go through your stuff that most people do during the winter. You need to go through your wheel bearings and check your brakes and, tear your rear end apart, take a look at it and, see what stuff you need to get to, make sure everything's right. Go through your Heims and, most people always put fresh bodies on their cars during the winter time and, just, make sure, the engine guy's going through the motor and making sure everything's looking good there. Just try to make sure when you start the year that you try to eliminate any mechanical failures. Is basically, you just want to be able to finish every lap that you're out there on the track. And that's really the whole key to winning championships that involve it. Very many races is making sure you're not sitting in the infield watching at the end of the night.
Yeah. Yeah. And talking about next season, it seems like a long way off, but I know it's going to jump right up on us. Have you looked at any 2026 schedules already? Is there anything you got circled? I know you're a fan of Mansfield. I got to feel like you're going to be running a race there. So what do you have planned for 2026?
Yeah, definitely. We've looked at Mansfield's schedule. It looks like there possibly could maybe be a conflicting date with Eldora, but we haven't seen Eldora's complete schedule. So, hopefully they're working together on the modified deal and they're not stepping on one of their toes there.
Mm-hmm.
But, right now, like modified wise, for sure Eldora, because that'll probably be a 4 or 5 race deal. And then, we'll probably hit Lima a couple times. I don't know that we're going to be an every week thing up there. We're kind of to the point with this car where we'd like to hit the some of the bigger modified races that pay a little more money. I'd say we're probably going to go back out to Fairbury and run the Prairie Dirt Classic again.
Nice.
So, Lawrenceburg has a big modified show every year, and obviously Mansfield has, it looks like 2, 3, or maybe 4 modified shows there that pay pretty good money. So we'll just kind of look and see who's racing where, and we watch the weather. I mean, if it looks really bad one way and looks a lot better heading another direction to race, I'm not into chasing raindrops around at my age. If I leave the house, I want to go race. I don't want to drive somewhere and sit there and watch it rain and then ruin your whole evening and you didn't get to do nothing. So I'd rather just sit at home at that point, not even go race, as to go sit there at the racetrack and waste the whole night and not get to do anything. And then late model wise, of course, we'll do the Eldora stuff. And then last year we pretty much stuck with the that Ironman, the old American late model series that Chris Tilley had. He's got a pretty good schedule put together again this next year. Way more races than I can probably handle. But last year I just picked and choose the races that I wanted to run with him. And we ended up 8th in points on his deal. And we probably only ran 75% of the races. So, which he only took your 80 best finishes. So kind of played in our favor with that. But I think next year the drivers all agreed they wanted 100% format. And, that's fine. I didn't really say yes or no because I knew I really couldn't run them all anyhow. So the guys that are committed to do the whole thing, they should have the say in what kind of rules format they want to go with and how they want to score the points. So, but I like his series. I like his payouts. So we'll do some of his stuff and maybe hit some Northern All-Star stuff, and maybe the occasional Lucas Oil World of Outlaw race here or there. It all depends. I'm just pretty well week to week on the late model stuff. I don't, I don't need to go race it. I just do it because it's fun, and I probably only be able to do it maybe here another 2, 3, 4 years, and then that'll probably be the end of the late model stuff, and we'll just concentrate on modified racing after that. But it's a lot of fun. I enjoy going to races where there's good quality cars and seeing how we stack up against them.
Yeah, and when you're talking about that schedule and races you're looking at, and you're mentioning different series, it brings me to my next question, and this is something that I kind of posed with the sprint car world, but I want to pose it to you. So I don't know if you've seen this or not, but Sling Dirt Media posted that there's potentially a new late model series that they're going to have coming to the area. You mentioned a lot of late model series that already run in this area. Now we're adding another late model series to the area. What are your thoughts about that? I mean, it's always like if everybody works together, then it'll work out great.
Yeah.
Does it come a time where we like oversaturate or we have too many series and not enough cars to go around?
Yeah, I think a lot of it will depend on, like, if they schedule, and I'll probably run some of that guys' races, depending on location-wise and what makes sense for me. Like, if that Ironman deal's a 3-hour away drive and this Sling and Dirt deal is only an hour drive, it makes sense to me to go run that because I'm probably not going to be committed to points in either one of them. So I'm just going to pick and choose what fits me best. But yeah, I mean, you can, especially if they start trying to butt heads and racing a little too close to one another. I haven't really seen nothing or heard anything about where these races are going to be. So,
Yeah.
I guess until you see something, it's hard to say, but, you know, he hasn't posted a full payout, just kind of to win and start money. And,
Right.
I don't know if he's got an entry fee, don't have an entry fee. I mean, but a lot of guys look at that. I mean, a lot
Sure.
of people don't want to pay entry fees. I'm kind of one of those guys. I mean, Chris Tilley has an entry fee, and I was on his ass a couple times this year about it. I felt like it was too high, but I realized they got to make money too. So,
Yeah.
I don't have, and I know that when I go to the race, so I guess I shouldn't even really bitch, but that's just kind of one of my pet peeves. I feel like if I bring a race car to the track and buy a pit pass, that I shouldn't have to pay an entry fee, on top of it. But I'm
Yeah.
just kind of old school. Most of the younger guys, I mean, they're so used to it with the Lucas World of Outlaws. They just, they all have entry fees, and
Right.
I kind of dog on them a lot of times about their entry fee, because if you don't make the feature, say you pay a $125 entry fee, most of the time you don't make the race, you get back $125. So you basically went and raced that night for no money, which for a guy like me, and I know it going into it, I'm not trying to make money, obviously. I'm just doing it because I love it. But, for a guy like me, I need to try to get a little bit of money back to say just
Sure.
pay for my fuel in my truck or
Yep.
or whatnot. I ain't expecting to get rich, but if I cover some of my expenses for the night when I go to the track, I'm perfectly happy when I leave and come home. And with Chris's deal, that's why I liked his payout, even though I grumbled about the entry fee most of the time when I went with him. When I left at the end of the night, I paid for my gas in my truck, my fuel in my race car, pit passes, whatnot, and maybe I made enough money to buy a tire or whatever. But it wasn't a total loss of money for the night, so to speak. So
Sure.
yeah.
Sure. And just to touch on that, slinging dirt. So Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana is on the flyer that they've made. 3,000 to win, 2,000 for second, 1,000 for third, and $400 to start. That's all the information that's out right now.
Right.
But like you said, and it comes down to this, and it seemed like it wasn't that long ago where it didn't look like you were going to get tracks or series to play nice together. I'm not sure if something has changed, but it seems like, especially moving into 2026, I think tracks in series are starting to realize that they have to work together.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, it's for the betterment of everybody. If, everybody tries to work together. I mean, especially, the state of Ohio, we have a lot of racetracks when you sit and look at it, and then you kind of include Indiana and Northern Kentucky a little bit. There's a lot of options to go race. For me, within a 2.5 hour drive, I can probably be to at least 10 different racetracks, I want to say, and that race late models or modifieds, and there's just a lot of tracks. So, and as expensive as racing is now, you got to kind of just do what makes sense for you so that you don't go broke doing this,
Right.
so that you got enough money to go race the following weekend. And, I see a lot of people, young people come into this sport and they think they got to just go race. And, halfway through the year, they ran themselves out of money because they weren't smart about, how they were spending it, where they were traveling off to, what kind of money they were racing for. And next thing you know, it's July and they're like, holy cow, I don't have any money to race. Well, I like to race as much as the next guy, but you got to be smart about how you're doing it, how you're spending your money, what kind of money you're racing for and making back. And, you just got to plan accordingly and, not dig yourself a hole. And holy cow, these big, like dirt late model teams, I don't know how some of them stay afloat. Like they're just spending money like it's water. And I don't know how they're surviving. And a lot of them go by the wayside rather quickly anymore because, they tried to keep up with the big teams and they found out that it was way too much money. And then next thing you know, they're having a sale, truck trailer, all the race cars, everything's for sale, and they're out, and they probably didn't need to try to keep up with them guys. They should have just picked and choose and done what fit their budget and went and had fun with that. But a lot of people nowadays feel like they need to be on that Lucas Oil or that World of Outlaw series, or they got to, or even some of these smaller ones, they got to do the Iron Man deal or whatever. Well, you don't have to do that stuff, but it's cool to do it and say you finish second, third, fourth in points with the Iron Man deal. That's all good and fine, but if you went broke doing it, what good was that? So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me what some people do nowadays.
Yeah, Jerry Bowersock, before we wrap this up, where can people follow you on social media, and do you have any memorabilia available?
No, not yet on the memorabilia, but I keep saying that every year, but I am definitely going to make a effort to make sure when the next race season rolls around that we got shirts going. But my daughter controls my Facebook page, Jerry Bowersock Racing, I believe.
Yep.
People can follow me on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Now I do that myself. That's me. And you can find me. I think it's at Jerry Bowersock, whatever it is on the Twitter. I'm not hard to find on there, but I think them's the only two forms. Don't have a website, but if we get some merch, we might try to figure out how people can. We'll get that set up where people can buy it through there, and hopefully we can get that all squared away heading into the spring.
Very cool. Very cool. Last but not least, sponsors that you would like to thank.
Yeah, for sure. On the modified, Eric, Al Austin, and Kate and Doug down in Florida with Lifetime Lumber. They all stepped up big to get this elite chassis. And while we were there, got to thank Nick Hoffman for his help with that, and Stevens and Hall Race Engines, Slicker Graphics, Brown Industrial, Willie's Carburetors for all their help, Keith Berner and Brent with AccuForce / Afterburner Performance. They did all of our shocks, and so they done real well. And on the late model, my buddy Clint Jameson from North Star Drilling and Nick Catahenry with Howard Johnson's in Lima. Anybody who wants to book a hotel room for a big race at Eldora, hit them up. They always have a racer's rate. They take care of the race fans up there. And I got my buddy Todd Book from T&B Tile. He's been helping me out for quite a while now. And Pete down at Frenchtown Trailer Sales. Anybody looking to buy a trailer, go check Pete out down there. They got a huge inventory of open and enclosed trailers, and Clements Race Engines, and once again Keith Berner on that for all his help with the shocks and stuff, and Ty Torwag Racing. He's helps me out with parts on both cars. So I got a lot of people. All my guys that help, Josh, Troy Pitts, Nick. They were pretty loyal. Sauce and Ryan, they show up at Eldora and help out. So them guys, they take a lot of time out of their lives to try to tag along and help out, whenever I go race, and that's much appreciated. And just Bart from Banshee Graphics, he does an awesome job on my late model, and Slicker, he does the modified, and both cars look really fabulous all the time, and they do great work. So we're just blessed to have a lot of people that help out in any way, shape, or form, whether it's buy a tire or a case of oil, or just come over and help you and buy some gas to get to the track or whatnot. Just got a lot of good people like that to just help out with small things that keep you rolling on down the road. So it's good to have all that help.
Definitely is.
And last but not least, my wife for putting up with all my bullshit for 40 years racing, and and my kids, and now I got 2 grand boys. So, I spend a lot of time, doing this one. I should probably be with them, but, they've had my back through all of it. So much appreciated there.
Yeah, very good. Very good shout out there.
Yeah.
Definitely got to get them in. A lot of people help you get to the
Can't forget
track
them.
and be competitive and wrap up your another Eldora Speedway Modified Championship. So, Jerry Bowersock, driver of the 95J late model and the 5X Modified, and again, your 2025 Eldora Speedway Modified Champion. Thanks for coming on.
Yep, appreciate it. Thanks for having me anytime.
Guys, this is Josh with the Dirt Court Jesters podcast, and we hope to see you at the track.